Today on the podcast, I have Danielle Kamela. She is an actor. Danielle, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, Jen.
Yes, you have such a fascinating story that I think is going to resonate with the audience. And the theme of reinvention. You have done it a number of times. We call reinvention resilience. We call it determination. We call it a lot of things. So I'm excited to get into who you are and how you're here today.
For sure. I am all about reinvention. Like you said, I've done it so many times in my life, so I'm excited to talk about it with you.
Yay. Okay, so when you were younger, you were like, I'm going to be an actress someday.
Yes. When I was younger, I was always into the arts. I had an imagination, a crazy one, just like every young kid does. But I always thought if I could turn that into a career, it would be incredible. But I also grew up with parents that were very athletic and sporty. Early on in my life, I dedicated it to gymnastics, competitive gymnastics.
I remember those gymnastics days. Yes, you work up those levels, right? And you had to learn these tricks and land them. It's a different kind of mindset you grow up with after you've done that for a while.
I think it messes up a lot of people because you grow up with that perfectionism because as a gymnast, you have to be perfect.
You get little points for all the teeniest things if you didn't raise your arm high enough or have your fingers the right way.
But I think that did teach me determination and grit when it comes to everything in life. So I had a good solid foundation when it comes to that. But it definitely took over, a huge part of my life.
Yeah, we're recovering gymnasts here, just to let you guys know. Okay, so at some point you did gymnastics and then decided, hey, I want to be a sports reporter.
Yes.
And a teacher or somebody rained on that parade.
When I was in college, my first year, I was not a good student. I kind of just slacked off. I knew I always wanted to be in sports broadcast to some degree. My first year, I partied too much. I went to Arizona State. Didn't do the best job my first year. My GPA was not looking too good when I tried to enroll in the Walter Cronkite School of Broadcast and Journalism. So I had gone to my counselor and told her what I wanted to do. I wanted to enroll in the program. She took a look at my GPA, my transcripts for my freshman year. She was like, you need to pick a new career because even if you tried to get your grades up, it's going to take you a while and you're just not cut out for this. And my whole world went crashing down at that moment because this is something I knew I wanted to do at that point. And she basically was telling me, well, you're never going to do it. And I think my mom was with me at the time. And I almost started crying in her office.
Right.
I left and kind of just slept on it. And I was like, no, screw that. You're not going to tell me who I can be or what I can become. I need to figure out another way to get into this industry. Mm-hmm. And so that is what I did.
Okay. So you ended up, when you couldn't do that, you got into communications, correct?
Yes.
And what made you decide that degree then?
I thought it's probably the most relevant to broadcast communications.
Okay.
What I did that really helped me is I decided I would try out for the Arizona Cardinals cheer team.
Okay.
So I could kind of like get a behind the scenes look at the world of sports broadcast from a cheerleader's perspective. Growing up a competitive gymnast, it's an easier transition to turn into a cheerleader. But I tried out my first year and I didn't make the team. So I was like, shoot, my plan's already fallen apart. Then I was like, well, maybe the Phoenix Suns dance team, let's give that a go. Tried out for the Phoenix Suns, didn't make that either.
Okay.
So that was 2 no's. And I was like, all right, let's just keep trying. Why not? So I tried out for the Cardinals the following year, and then I ended up making it.
And what was different the second year than the first year?
I think I wasn't as nervous because I had already gone through the failure. Mm-hmm. I had already been told no, and I got over it. I moved on. And I tried harder when it comes to dance training and things like that. And I think I had a little bit different of a mindset. The first one, I had no idea what I was doing. At least the second tryout, I could go in knowing a little something about the process and everything like that.
So that obviously proved beneficial.
Yes.
And were you happy when you made the team?
I was so excited. That was one of the most exciting moments of my life. We actually went to Super Bowl that year.
How awesome is that?
Yeah.
Way to pick the year to be a part of it.
I'm like, well, I can end my cheerleading career now because this is the top of the top cheering at the Super Bowl.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, so it was so much fun.
Was it a big time commitment for you with school?
I was strictly a full-time student. It wasn't too bad, and it gave me more of a social life because I wasn't doing too many things with ASUs. I really enjoyed it.
Okay. And didn't you do the dance team too then?
Yeah. After I did the Cardinals, I was like, yeah, maybe I'll go back for the Suns again and see if I can make that team too. And so I tried out for the Suns and I made it as well. On my second tries, I made both teams again, so I could check those off my bucket list.
And how long did you stay on those teams?
Both for 1 season each.
When you take it to the top, you're just saying, got the experience, time to move on.
Exactly. It was so much fun.
So you did that, and then you graduated.
Well, I was still in school when I was with the Phoenix Suns.
Okay.
And I was doing some work on the Jumbotron, like announcing items they were selling at the team shop at the arena. And Fox Sports Arizona saw me on the Jumbotron and had reached out for an audition for a new position that they were having, which was called Fox Sports Arizona Girls. And we basically did different commercials for the network. We hosted different events. And we were really like the fans' connection to all of our sports teams. I auditioned for it and I ended up getting it. And I was like, well, I made it into sports broadcast. I didn't have to listen to my counselor. So that was the final like aha moment for me, was like, okay, I didn't have to go to the Walter Cronkite School and have that, but I still made it into broadcast, like you said, through the back door.
So I got into this horrific car crash in 2018. I remember this guy peeling back the windshield. When he peeled it back, he was like, are you okay? Our eyes caught. And I looked at him and I'm like, based on his facial expression, I am not okay. So instead of taking that as my truth, I closed my eyes out of fear and wiggled my fingers and toes. I'm like, I can feel my fingers and toes. I'm okay. I say that story because I think so often the outside world is going to tell us we're not okay, or we're not good enough, or this isn't going to happen. But it's up to our internal world to say if we really want this thing and to make it happen. And so I love that you did that in a roundabout way. And I think all of us listening have that power. Maybe the external world is telling us no. That doesn't mean stop. That doesn't mean it's your truth. You have another option. Check in with yourself. Make sure you still want to do this thing, and then find a way.
That's so true. I'm going to think of that story moving forward because that's incredible.
Yeah, I use it all the time when I'm on the mountains and I'm scared. The world's telling me I'm scared, but if I close my eyes, I'm like, I can feel my fingers and toes. Everything is a story. Right now, I'm okay. And it just allows me to connect to myself and to continue on. So you're welcome to use it anytime.
Okay, great.
Yes.
That's going to be one of my inspirations if I'm ever having a hard time. Like, okay, think of Jenn's fingers and toes.
Yes, they're working. They're not cut off. They're fine. I can feel them. So you got into broadcasting that way. And how long were you there?
I was 24 when I got the job, and it ended when I was 27, so 3 years.
And did you like it? Was it what you thought it was going to be? I think a lot of times we like jobs and we get there and we're like, just kidding.
I loved it. It was one of the best jobs I ever had because I'm a huge sports fan and I grew up in Arizona. So I was representing all of my Arizona teams and I was able to connect with so many fans. And I think to share that passion for love of the game and love of your sports teams is something really cool and special. We have a lot of transplants here in Arizona, so there's not a lot of these diehard Arizona sports fans. I got to connect with all the real ones.
And so at 27, what was the transition?
They got rid of the position that I had at Fox Sports. And this is when I kind of had to evaluate, okay, what do you want to do now? You're 27, so you're still young. You have all these other dreams, like you did want to act. Let's take this time to try the LA thing. So it was kind of like a spur of the moment decision. I found someone that was living out there who needed a roommate, and I just packed up my car and drove to LA to try to make it.
Good for you. Girl in a dream. Watch out.
It's wild because
you don't know anybody or anything. How do you even begin to learn that one?
I was like a lost puppy. I had no clue. I remember getting to my apartment in LA and my roommate had a cat. I was just like, I don't even think I can do this. Am I allergic to this cat? I was just like freaking out. But I wasn't allergic to the cat. I did have to learn, besides the acting industry, how to be by myself because I didn't know anyone there. So it really taught me independence because I would go out and do things by myself. And I was never that way.
And that is hard when you're not used to it, right? It is hard. I have 7 children and I'm watching them. They always go places as a herd. There's always somebody to pick from. When they have to go somewhere by themselves, they are a duck out of water. They're like, what's going on? I don't want to go. It's pretty interesting to watch.
They'll have the moments when they're finally going to have to branch off and do all that. And that was my moment, but it was at 27. Movies, beach, random restaurants. I was like, I can't just sit at home this whole time.
Good for you. That's good, though. It takes us a moment to find ourselves and be able to be intimate with ourselves and understand that piece. So how did interviews go?
I didn't have an agent or anything like that. When I left Arizona, I had my agent, Ford, which I still have today. They helped guide me a little bit and set up some appointments, but no agency was wanting to take me at the time. I didn't have a lot of experience with acting. So I asked one of my friends, I'm like, hey, his name's David. I'm like, do you know anyone? Like, cause he lived out there as well, but we weren't that close. We just kind of knew each other. He told me that this agency has an open call, but you have to know someone. He told me, go to the open call and say, you know, Mitzi. And I go to this open call. There's tons of people there. It's in this office building downtown LA. I write my name down and it says, who referred you? And I was like, oh, Mitzi. We're all waiting for whatever is going to happen next. And the owner of the agency walks out and is like, hey, everyone who said they know Mitzi, come back here. And I was like, I'm going to get caught. I don't know who Mitzi is.
Is this Mitzi calling us back and I don't even know? Right.
I was so scared. I was like, whatever. I'm like in this. This is happening. So it was a group of probably like 7 or 8 of us. We go back to his office and he's like, so Mitzi's my neighbor. Like, of course, like, I'm going to give you guys a piece of advice. He wasn't grilling us on how do you know Mitzi?
Thank gosh, because that's what would be running through my mind too.
So he just gave us advice on what to do in front of the camera. Stand out, do something different. I hadn't taken a lot of acting classes. Thank you for the tips. So we all just went in and had the cold read of a script. I remember doing little different quirky things because he said do stuff to stand out. I ended up getting signed by his agency. So that was awesome. I was able to audition for different commercials that my agency signed me on.
Did that change the trajectory of getting on deals and things? Because a lot of it's who you know.
Yes, for sure. I had so many auditions. Probably out of all those auditions I had, I only booked one. And it was probably 1 out of 43.
I think that's kind of normal though.
At the time, I didn't know that. I'm like, am I just horrible? What is happening? But it's so competitive. There's 1,000 other people that look like you going after these one-off gigs. A lot of it was commercial when I was there. So I just kept trucking along.
How do you pump yourself up to go to another one after you've been rejected? What's your self-talk?
At this point, I did reflect on my cheerleading. I'm like, okay, I didn't give up on those and it worked out. This might be taking longer, but you're here in LA, like you literally moved out of your home state. You just need to keep going, at least for a few years, because this was all within the first year I was there. Mm-hmm. But at the time I was like so broke that it made it even like tougher.
Did you wait tables and things or what'd you do to supplement your income?
Well, at the time I did have a boyfriend who was helping me out a little bit here and there. So that was such a blessing. But yeah, I was also waiting tables and doing little one-off gigs that weren't acting gigs, but you could go on Craigslist and find like, oh, be background for this or do that. So I would just do any of that I could find.
Okay, so how long did it take you till you got your first gig?
I want to say it took me probably, after I signed with the agency, about 4 months. It does take people a lot longer than that sometimes, but the gig I had gotten was big time pay. So I was like, phew, I can survive a few more months.
And what was that?
That was an IMAX ad.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was like jumping on a trampoline with like a little kid and they like imposed it in space. So it was fun. Yeah, it was cool.
Well, that's kind of fun too, to go to the IMAX and be like, that's me.
Yeah, it was.
Right?
It was cool. Yeah. So it was a good first one.
Perfect. And then what went from there?
And then I also looked, I think this was on Craigslist as well, but I had saw a casting call for a reality TV show called Tough Enough.
Okay.
The concept of Tough Enough is you compete to win a WWE contract.
Hi.
And I never wanted to do reality TV. That's just not something I was like very interested in. I used to watch wrestling all the time and I thought like The Rock, because I'm Samoan. So like he's Samoan. So I was like The Rock. But I also loved watching the women because I was like, oh, these chicks, they're jacked. They're so cool.
I remember American Gladiator and watching those people. I loved them.
That was amazing too. I used to want to be on that show as well. I was like, I don't want to do reality TV, but these divas, I admired them growing up. That would be so incredible. Let's just go try out and see what happens. Because if I could win a contract, all right, I'll do the reality TV. So I went and I tried out for the show, which is a whole nother story in itself. But at the end of it, they're like, hey, we don't want you for the reality TV show, but we want you to come back and actually have a full tryout to be on our roster. And I was like, okay, that's great. If I can come back and try out and make it and not have to do the reality TV, I think that's a little more ideal for this. Was what I was thinking. I was like, I might not have made this show, but this might work out better.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found a wrestling school in LA called Knox Pro, just to make sure I liked it and that it's something I could do. I ended up falling in love with wrestling and prepared like no other. I was like, I need to be in the best shape. I need to make sure I could talk. I need to
So
make
how
sure
much time did you have between this and when you had to come back?
It was about 3 months.
Oh, so you had 3 months to just knock it out.
Yeah. So I was training and I was just acting and then like occasionally working here and there. So it was like the perfect thing to add into my schedule in LA. Yeah. So I did that. And then I came back for my tryout and then they ended up signing me. Yes. So I was like, all right, on to the next.
Were you so excited? I can't even imagine.
I was, because at that point I was like, I want to be a professional wrestler.
You had sold yourself on the vision of what this career was going to be.
Absolutely. I'm like, this is me. I can stay in shape. I can do all of this. I was over the moon about it. My year mark in LA came up, and that's when I moved to Orlando for wrestling.
Perfect timing. So you were in LA for 1 year, you got one gig with IMAX, a couple other small things, and then landed the WWE thing.
Yes.
From a Craigslist ad that was, hey, you have to compete to have this opportunity. And they saw you and like, nope, we're going to whatever. You do this. And then you go through all this training because you fall in love with it, which I love the fact that you're thinking, what can I do to position myself as best as possible to win this thing? And then you win it. Did you know you were moving to Orlando before you tried this thing out?
I did, but at the time, I really didn't like LA. It was just so hard. You're just like slumming it. And once I hit that year mark, I was like, oh, I'm used to LA, but now I'm leaving. But I didn't know anything about Orlando. I hadn't really been there, maybe like Disney World once, so I didn't have any preconceived notions of
what Orlando really is. Okay, so you moved to Orlando.
Yes.
How does this work? What does this look like?
2 weeks before I moved to Orlando, my wrestling school had a show in Dallas. They're like, Danielle, do you want to be on the show? I was thinking, I'm already signed. But in my head, I'm like, you want to be a professional wrestler, do the show. I had just been learning the basics. So I was like, okay, I'll do the show. And then I moved to Orlando in a week or two. During that show, I broke my hand.
No.
Yes.
Are you kidding? How did you break your hand?
It was a boxer's fracture. So it was a freak accident. I had my hand just by my leg. I got a kick to this leg, but the hand was there. And it broke. So it doesn't even like go down anymore. It just stays like this.
Oh, no.
So I was freaking out. And I was like, I have to tell them. And I remember WWE saying, like, you can do the show. Just make sure you don't get hurt. So in my head, I'm like, I'm going to get fired before I'm even really hired. So I had to go there. And luckily, they still took me. And I rehabbed while I was there to fix my hand. But I came in with a broken hand.
Okay, so you start training there. When do they start giving you the character to play?
Right from the beginning, you're allowed to try whatever you want.
Really?
What's very cool in NXT, which is where everyone starts from the ground up, they let you play with your own character ideas and have your own creative things. They have promo classes every week. You could try different things. You could try one character one week, one the other.
Okay.
And you have shows on the weekends in front of, like, we had shows at armories all across Florida. One night we'd drive to Tampa, then we'd drive to Largo, Cocoa Beach, all over every weekend to train, get reps in, and try different character things. So it was very creative and free-flowing all the time, which was a lot of fun.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So what different characters did you try?
At first, I wanted to do a cheerleader character, but then I was like, maybe this is a little too cheesy. There's nothing too cheesy for wrestling. Wrestling can be whatever you want it to be. So I was like, maybe I'll like not do the cheerleading thing. I already did that. What else can I do? So then I started doing more of a sinister type character because I love horror movies and things like that. I tried that for a little bit. And then the character I kind of stuck on was my character, Vanessa Bourne. I called myself the Vision because she was very into art. She was very into looking perfect all the time, but she was also a complete bitch, just very rude, very demeaning to people. Like, I'm above you, you're below me. So I was like a bad guy for mostly my entire career.
How did that feel when you got out of the bad guy suit? Was that different?
Honestly, it was very strange. Personally, I was not like my character at all, but I've been playing this bad guy for so long that sometimes I would catch myself being mean. I was like, oh my God, that's Vanessa Bourne coming out in real life.
So you're Vanessa Bourne, and your character starts getting some following, I'm guessing. And then what goes on from there?
From there, I did start getting a huge following, mostly in the wrestling community, but I had a lot of people follow me from being a cheerleader to being on Fox Sports to then being a wrestler, which is
quite the career path.
Cool.
Yes.
Because it's all kind of within the same industry. I've had some supporters since I was 20.
Oh,
yeah,
that's pretty awesome.
It's so awesome. So yeah, I built my Vanessa Bourne career, started getting a following. Another thing that's fun with wrestling is you can be this persona on social media, kind of blend the lines. I had a lot of fun talking trash to a bunch of people online as well.
Good for you.
So that was fun. I had her persona for about 6 years.
6 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Man, she's a part of you.
Oh, yeah.
Outfit still?
Yes, I still have her outfits. Now when I still wrestle, sometimes I wrestle under that persona, but I more wrestle as myself now. Usually a good guy.
The good guys always win. So you end up being a good guy. We talked about this a little bit before, but the audience hasn't gotten to hear yet. COVID happens, and that kind of messes things up.
When you start training, you're in Florida at the Performance Center, and you're in NXT, which is a specific branch of WWE. While you're in NXT, everyone is working to be a part of the next step up, which is Raw and SmackDown, and that's television, live television every single week. That's the big times. That's what we're all working towards. Before COVID happened, I was called in and they were like, hey, you're moving up to the main roster. Now everything's kind of considered the same, but obviously Raw and SmackDown TV, that's where you want to be. So I moved up to that next level. I was so excited. I'm like, this is what I've worked so hard for. And throughout those 6 years, so many ups and downs, so many emotions. It's like a roller coaster. I was very excited. And once you're on that next level, you're allowed to move anywhere in the US.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I was like, thank God I'm getting out of Orlando.
Perfect. And you came back here?
Yes, I came back here.
Arizona through and through?
Yes. But during that time was kind of when COVID, it hadn't hit yet. But I remember when I was traveling back home was when the airports were about to shut down. So I had just escaped before they shut down. I was back in AZ, but since COVID happened, WWE couldn't have live audiences anymore. They weren't really traveling unless you were essential worker. Luckily, we were technically essential workers. People were still allowed to travel, but they were having shows out of the Performance Center because a lot of talent, even on the main roster, still lived in Florida. I wasn't a part of any storyline anymore. I wasn't in NXT. I wasn't on Raw. I wasn't on SmackDown. They had just been pitching ideas for me. So I sat home for about a year. And I was like, oh my gosh, please, I just want to get back to work. Everyone was thinking that, I'm sure.
It's all of our experience.
Yes.
Like, I want normal. I want work. I want to contribute. I want to have friends. I want to socialize.
Yeah, for sure. Even with me, I was like, well, everyone else that has my job is still working, but I'm not. When COVID started to kind of, we were doing all the testing and people were allowed to travel, I finally went back to Florida to get back in the ring, to, just get back in ring shape. And then I got COVID. So I was like, man, I've only been here 2 days. I've trained 2 days. And I was like, of course I would get COVID here because we're all training together. So that was a mess because I had to have my boyfriend at the time fly out to Orlando, drive me all the way back to Texas where he lived. And then I just stayed there and rode COVID out for 7 days. But I didn't get to train. And around this time, it was Thanksgiving. So it kind of went right into the holidays. And with WWE, they do cuts probably 2 or 3 times a year. And they had cuts, I want to say, maybe it was April or May of the next year. And I still had sat at home that entire time. And so when cuts came around, I was on that list. So
that's devastating.
It was.
Because that's who you were for 6 years. And then you're excited because you got elevated to the next level. And now you're going to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
So how do you reinvent yourself then?
That was the hardest, and that took me a very long time to do because I wasn't Vanessa Bourne, but I was Danielle Kamela, the professional wrestler. This is what I love to do. This is my identity. And after that, I was like, what am I supposed to do now? I know I am multi-talented. I know I can do a lot of things, but this was the thing.
Well, yeah, it brought out a lot of your skills into one arena.
Yes. And I had been working so hard for 6 years to get to that level. And it's I kind of tasted it, but not really. I didn't even get to do one big match on TV on Raw or SmackDown. So I was super frustrated. And I went through a period of time where I was just woe is me, you know what I mean? But then I was okay, you need to pull yourself together and figure out what's next? So I ended up re-signing with my agency. I ended up diving into content creation because that's always been something I enjoy. It's just another creative outlet, right? I started doing that and then getting gigs within sports again. So I was able to tap into all of the things I used to do and make that a career again. And then I do still wrestle from time to time. And I don't think wrestling is over for me. I don't think that's how my career is supposed to end, but I don't have the answers yet of what that ending is or where it goes. I think for me, I need to plug back into my creativity and get in a good flow and then see where things go.
And what are you doing to allow yourself to get into the flow and reinvent that creative side?
I think for me, it's just having more of a positive mindset, because ever since that happened with WWE, I haven't had that aha moment of like, why did this happen? Why didn't my career end the way I thought it should have ended? Since I haven't had, I guess, that moment, for me, it's just working more on like the self-development side of me and getting in a good mindset. That helps with my flow. You know, I think it's just so important, like being positive, every audition I go into being like, okay, you're going to do your best. And if you get it,
I know, because it's such a unique field from the standpoint of you could do everything perfect, but they want somebody that looks like me, or they want somebody that looks like somebody entirely. And so the look plays such a role into it on top of the skill, because they have an idea of what this character is going to be.
Yeah, definitely. It just brought me back to the LA days where you walk into a casting and you see a bunch of people that look like you. But now there's not really a lot of in-person castings. It's just like you film yourself and send in a tape. So now it's like, I don't even have to see my competition. I just send in a tape, and then if it's me, it's me.
That's kind of nice too, I would imagine. I don't want to know all the people. Just let me do me and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, it is nice. It is nice now that I've like the good ideas. So
Yeah. Okay, well, we barely touched on this, but you're doing a comedy show next weekend, which that's a new skill and something that you're allowing yourself to explore, which I don't have the courage to do. So how did you get the courage enough to step into that piece?
There are a lot of similarities between wrestling and comedy. With wrestling, you kind of work off the crowd.
Okay.
Because the crowd might really like something and you're like, okay, maybe we should do that again. Or maybe we got to tailor our match to those crowd reactions. When I first started my career, I didn't know what I was doing in wrestling. A lot of times the crowd would be silent, and that is not good because they're not into it. Like, deafening moment is nobody's saying anything, nobody's cheering. They're just sitting there and you're like trying to do your thing. You're like, please cheer, guys. But they're just not into it. I think with comedy, that is similar because you can be telling jokes, and if they're not funny or the crowd's not liking it.
How are you coming up with jokes?
My life. There's a lot of stories within that whole interview that have its moments. So I'm plugging in my real life into my comedy.
Good for you. The thing I love about comedy is I'm a speaker on stage, right? And so they talk about getting repetition. And again, you present in front of a group, you hear what works, you fine tune them, you cut out some other ones, and you're always testing material. Does it resonate for whoever you're delivering to? And comedy is that, right? I mean, it is reps, and you're refining and figuring it out. And so when we see somebody on television, that material has been tested endlessly before we even get to it. And I think that's so important with whatever we're pursuing in life, refining till we have something worthy of delivering.
Definitely. I'm really excited. It's my second time doing it. My mindset is I'm going to do the best I can, but I'm fully prepared to bomb. Like, it's just, as long as you know, like, that can happen, kind of takes the pressure off.
And it's not your end goal, right? Like, so for me, when I climbed to Mount Everest, there was a lot of people that didn't summit because it was too much. But because it wasn't my summit, I was using Mount Everest to train for K2. It removed a lot of pressure that I put on myself. I'm like, I just need to figure out how my gear works, how I feel at these altitudes, what's going on. Yes, I want to summit, but this is part of a bigger picture. And so when you allow it to just be a piece instead of the whole thing, it's a lot easier to keep going.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Because I would be like, Mount Everest is a big, huge deal.
It is a big deal. It's not that it's nothing. But it was just, for me mentally, I remember thinking, oh, I'm so glad this isn't my mountain, because I would have that energy. And I don't have that energy because I'm not so tied to the summit as I would as some of my other peaks. I'm like, I have to get to the top of this thing, so we're going.
Yes.
Yeah. You've had a lot of setbacks, and you've been able to still maneuver and go forward and work on things, what are some tools that you use to keep yourself built up in a field that constantly tells you you're not what they want?
Right. I guess, first of all, if I can do it and get over these things, anyone can. You know, I am one human amongst so many other humans. And I think for me, connecting with people who have been through setbacks really does help me. And listening to other people's stories helps me stay in check, because it's not just me who goes through setbacks and, persists and makes it. It's so many other people. People don't realize how many go through these things.
I forgot The Rock started in wrestling until you brought that up today. I mean, look at that guy now.
Right. And I hear so many stories of actors who are about to quit but decided, I'll go on this one more audition. And that happened to be the one that sets them off. If people really, truly just dig deep inside themselves and put their minds to things and do not allow other people to get in their head, just learning to not really give an F about what other people think and just go after it. It sounds so cheesy, but we really do only have this short blip of time on earth. And if you waste it and don't go after what you really want, what kind of life is that?
Yeah. Now, do you have a hard stop for yourself? Like, if I don't get to this thing by this time, then I'm going to pivot and do something else? Or do you not have it that defined?
No, I don't yet. It's kind of like if you have a B, C, and a D plan, it's very easy to kind of not take plan A as seriously as you normally would. I don't right now. I'm not saying that can't change, but at least with acting, I feel like you can continue acting at any age. There's roles, you know what I mean? Like stories have people from all different ages. So for me with acting, I'm like, that's something I know I will continue to do my entire life.
Yeah. I like that. I don't believe in plan B and C and D. I feel like if you do have a plan B, C, or D, then you've taken away the energy to A. And if you're really committed to A, it has to have everything. That's what our goals require of us if they're big enough.
Yes.
But there could be a point where this can't happen, or something shifted, or you get married, or you have kids, or life changes, then those pivots are allowed. But I try to stay as focused on the one thing as possible and let people call me crazy. It's fine.
Don't let people... You can't give an F.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. And so being an entrepreneur, what is your favorite part about it, and what's the hardest part about it?
Oh my gosh. My favorite part is getting to see my creative ideas come to life. You know, your little baby dreams, and you can do whatever you want. But my least favorite part is the struggle. It's really hard, and things never go as planned. You always have to change. You always have to be reinventing. It is tough, but it's like the American dream. Having your own business, not having to work for anyone else. It's a good feeling when things do come into place.
It's like the high of the highs and the low of the lows. When it goes, you're just like, yes. And when it doesn't go, there's a lot of self-love you need to provide yourself, and have those tools ready to be used, because coming from an empty cup is not going to help.
When you're the lowest of lows, I always think back on, oh, remember when this awesome thing happened? That will happen again in some way or form. But, just got to ride this out.
I'm like, the good times don't last, the bad times don't last. The good times don't last, the bad times don't last. And when I'm hiking through a storm, I'll just repeat that the entire time to get out of my mind and make the thing happen. Yeah. Okay, so how do we follow along on your journey and keep in touch with you?
I guess the easiest way is Instagram. That's my favorite platform. So it's just at Danielle Kamela. That's where I post a lot. Like, I do a lot of stories, and I try to be active on there. So definitely on Instagram.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much for sharing your story today. Yes,
Thanks.
for sure.